It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The father of missing teenager Jay Slater has told Sky News about the living nightmare his family has been through since his disappearance on Tenerife 6 days ago.
I just want my body back, that's it. So I just want my body back.
Also tonight, both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak call out Nigel Farage for his claim the EU and NATO provoked Russia into invading Ukraine. Palestinian officials claim at least 42 people have been killed in Israeli attacks in northern Gaza, with the IDF saying it was a strike on Hamas infrastructure. Campaigners demand citizenship for victims of the Windrush Scandal, with many still waiting for compensation. Plus, even a downpour can't dampen Scotland's high spirits ahead of their must-win game against Hungary at the Euros. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. I just want my boy back. The father of teenager Jay Slater has told Sky News of the nightmare his family has gone through since his son went missing on Tenerife 6 days ago. Warren Slater also spoke of his hope that Jay has somehow managed to find help. The alternative, he says, is unimaginable. The 19-year-old went missing after attending the Energy Festival in South Tenerife, which ended last Sunday. He'd been staying at an apartment complex in nearby Los Cristianos. But after the festival, he went to a different apartment in the Masca area, where he stayed on Sunday night. His last recorded location was in rural Deteno Park, a mountainous area popular with hikers. One of his friends says he called her on Monday morning to say he was lost, in need of water, and only had 1% of battery power left on his phone. He told her he was walking back to his apartment after deciding not to wait for the bus, a walk that would have taken 11 hours. At 9:04 a.m. on Monday, he was reported missing. Sky's Shingi Mararike reports now from Tenerife.
It's day 6 and they're still searching. Emergency services continuing their focus on these mountains in Tenerife in their efforts to find Jay Slater. The 19-year-old from Lancashire went missing after attending a music festival on the island, on his first holiday abroad. Jay's family visited the scene today, his dad Warren confronted with fears no parent ever wants to face.
Nightmare. It's been a nightmare. Just hoping that somebody has helped him off this mountain. That's all I want, is that somebody has helped him get off this mountain.
So many of the questions around what happened begin here with this villa, where Jay came with 2 men. Hours later, he disappeared. Ophelia, who runs the cafe above the villa, was most likely the last person to see Jay. She told him what time the bus was coming, before he headed in the opposite direction into the national park, where his phone was last located. This area is difficult terrain for even experienced hikers like Susanna. She walked part of the area that was combed by search teams yesterday.
It's very difficult. So I'm an athletic person, and the way down was difficult on the knees. The way up, halfway through, having had lunch, having had adequate water, having had a hiking pole to help us along, was very difficult. By the end, it was, really a mind over matter.
So this is the route through the mountains where they're looking for Jay. It's a really narrow path that's difficult for drivers and even more difficult for anyone who would have been on foot. Beneath the beauty, parts of the landscape are arid. On this volcanic island, temperatures can reach 30 degrees Celsius this time of year. Difficult conditions for any search operation. Lancashire police offered to help with the search, but it was turned down, with the civil guard insisting they have enough resources. But at the heart of this is a family who are here and hurting as they clutch onto their hopes for a miracle.
I just want my body back, that's it. So I just want my body back.
Shingi Mararike, Sky News, Tenerife.
We might be in the midst of a bitter election campaign, but both Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer were in agreement today in their condemnation of comments made by Nigel Farage. The Reform UK leader was criticised for claiming that NATO and EU expansion provoked Russia into invading Ukraine. He argues his warnings date back to 2014, when he was a member of the European Parliament. But Mr Farage's opponents have accused him of playing into the hands of Vladimir Putin. Our political correspondent Darren McCaffrey has this report.
We are recording.
For most of this campaign, these three political leaders have tried to avoid talking about Nigel Farage. Today, though, he was front and centre of their attacks after the Reform leader claimed it was the EU and NATO who helped incite Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We've provoked this war. It's, of course, it's his fault. He's used what we've done as an
provoked
excuse.
the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it.
For the Prime Minister, who's watched on as Reform poll numbers have started to overtake his own, he hopes that Farage's comments may make undecided voters think twice.
What he said was completely wrong and only plays into Putin's hands. This is a man who deployed nerve agents on the streets of Britain, who's doing deals with countries like North Korea, and this kind of appeasement is dangerous for Britain's security, the security of our allies that rely on us, and only emboldens Putin further.
For the Labour leader at a Windrush event in London, he launched an equally punchy attack.
Farage's comments about Russia and Ukraine are disgraceful. I've always been clear that Putin bears responsibility, sole responsibility, for the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And we have always stood behind Ukraine and supported Ukraine. And so far, we've done it united across Parliament.
The Lib Dem leader didn't exactly walk on eggshells in his comments either.
I don't share any values with Nigel Farage. This is another example, but my message to the British people, we need to support the Ukrainian people. This is a time of deep insecurity in our world.
Nigel Farage's comments are not new. They're part of a political calculation in the midst of a general election campaign. Some will agree with them, many might feel uncomfortable. But for a politician who likes to rail against consensus, this is a row he won't mind having.
Well, Darren joins us live now from Westminster. And Darren, a day of focus on Nigel Farage. But if the Conservatives were hoping to move on from the election day betting scandal, they may be disappointed looking at some of tomorrow's newspapers.
Yeah, indeed, Gillian. Fascinating this is the focus, I think, tomorrow will return to the Conservatives' faltering campaign, if you like. At least one newspaper tonight suggesting that yet another Conservative official is under investigation by the Campbell Commission. This is, of course, in the wake of allegations around some Conservative candidates and indeed a criminal investigation into a close protection officer of the Prime Minister around bets that were placed in the lead up to the general election announcements about when precisely it would be held. Now, why does this matter? It's not just because it's dominating the front pages of the paper when clearly the Conservatives would want to be talking about other stuff. It's because it's got this terrible political cliche of cut through, and Michael Gove in the Sunday Times tomorrow alludes to that, talking about how it's akin to Partygate, if you like, that it suggests there is one rule for them and another rule for the rest of us. In fact, Michael Gove says that that was damaging at the time of Partygate and it is damaging here. Meanwhile, in other news, Brexit anniversary tomorrow, which is fascinating. The Conservative Party, who have not really talked enough about Brexit during this campaign, are going to suggest that that is at risk because of, or could be at risk because of, a Labour government. Interestingly, that is being put forward by different members of the Cabinet tomorrow. Thus far in this campaign, an awful lot of focus has been on Rishi Sunak. It's been quite a presidential campaign. Some have been quite critical of that. Tomorrow it does seem like a slight change in strategy in the sense that we're going to hear from different cabinet ministers in different publications making different arguments about the threat that Labour poses. As for the Labour Party themselves, they're actually talking about the opinion polls and suggesting that maybe people at home should ignore them and not think that there will be some type of massive majority for Labour. They're clearly concerned that that might depress voter turnout, if you like, if people think that Labour are going or likely to win a stonky majority.
Darren, thanks for all of that. The General Secretary of the Unite Union has told Sky News she wants Labour to borrow more money to invest in public services if it wins the election, urging Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves to U-turn on her promises over fiscal rules. Speaking to Sky's Trevor Phillips, Sharon Graham said Labour should follow the example of the US and France.
Well, look, I don't agree with Rachel Reeves in terms of what has been said about the plans on growth. Because whilst we all want growth, I want growth, I think everybody would want growth, we are going to have to borrow to invest. Look, if you look at other countries, in France, their debt to GDP is 112%. In America, where the economy is growing, it's 130% debt to GDP. Ours is around about 99%. We have wiggle room. Give Britain a break. Give us a break. I mean, these people that are out there in communities and the workers, they are literally hurting beyond anything that you could comprehend. And what we need is we need to straitjacket off a little bit, get some wiggle room there. Borrowing to invest is not the same as other borrowing.
And you can watch the full interview with Sharon Graham tomorrow morning from 8:30 a.m. here on Sky News. Trevor Phillips will also be joined by the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, and former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick. Palestinian officials claim 42 people have died following airstrikes in northern Gaza. Israel Defense Forces said its fighter jet struck 2 Hamas military targets, but deny responsibility for a separate attack following claims Israeli tanks shelled civilians in a refugee camp in Rafah. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports.
It's been another violent 24 hours in Gaza. On Friday night, a number of explosions hit a tented camp in Al-Mawasi, a designated safe zone close to Rafah. A Red Cross building was nearby. The health ministry in Gaza says that at least 25 were killed and blames Israeli airstrikes. The Israeli military denies it, but has not given an alternative explanation.
We were inside our tent when a sound bomb exploded near the Red Cross tents. My husband went outside at the first explosion, then a second bomb went off, even closer to the Red Cross door, and people began to gather. I tried to communicate with my husband but was unable to. We fled as we were in our clothes, barefoot. I tried to communicate with him but could not.
On Saturday, the Israeli Air Force hit the Al-Shati district in Gaza City with a series of massive strikes. Israel says it was targeting Hamas infrastructure. There are rumours a senior Hamas official was killed, but many others are also dead.
I didn't know which building was hit. I was worried. I wanted to check up on my children and my parents. When I got home, my family was panicking. They told me my sister was killed in the attack. I went to see her at the hospital. We buried her. May she rest in peace.
The IDF says it has another 3 to 4 weeks of fighting in Rafah. What happens next is unclear. After almost 9 months of fighting, Hamas is still functioning in Gaza. Its senior leaders are still alive, and 120 Israeli hostages are still being held. Israel has not yet achieved its war aims, and a ceasefire is not on the table. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
More than 350 charities, businesses and direct action groups have taken part in the Restore Nature Now march in central London. The broadcaster, Chris Packham, led the march with an estimated 60,000 people taking part. Other prominent campaigners included the former Green Party leader, Caroline Lucas, businessman Dale Vince and the actor, Dame Emma Thompson.
And we have had government after government have completely ignored the advice, rising steadily the panic in the voices of the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, all scientists saying we are in deep, deep trouble. But I think that today, one of the most important things for us to remember is that we are one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. We are also one of the most rich. So this is just not good for anybody.
76 years ago, the Empire Windrush arrived in Essex with more than 1,000 people from the Caribbean who'd been invited to come to help remedy a post-war labour shortage. They were given the right to live and work in Britain permanently, but some were later wrongly deemed illegal immigrants. Today, campaigners have called for the next government to grant citizenship to all victims of the Windrush Scandal. Siobhan Freeman-Powell reports.
A celebration of Caribbean culture and contributions. Events in Birmingham remembering those who left behind tropical islands to rebuild Britain and their lives. It's been 76 years since the first 1,000 arrived on the Empire Windrush. But tens of thousands would soon follow. Like Roxanne, who travelled at 14 years old from Guyana to join her mum, who was a nurse in the NHS.
I remember turning to my brother and said, our grandmother said the streets of London was paved with gold. Where is the gold? But I then later learned, as my life living in England, what she was actually saying. There were opportunities.
On the 6th National Windrush Day, this year's theme is about passing on the baton to the descendants of that generation, ensuring their rich history doesn't get lost as time passes on. But in the midst of the celebrations, others are commemorating the lives impacted by a scandal, which saw thousands stripped of their citizenship, and their suffering continues. Like Shane, who was just 4 months old when his British mum brought him home, and in his 30s when he was told he didn't belong.
I was already begging to stay in the country, and now you're asking me to beg because of your rules. You changed the law.
He could be entitled to a compensation scheme set up by the Home Office, but hasn't applied, as he found the process re-traumatising. The Home Office says £85.86 million has been paid across 2,382 claims, providing documents confirming citizenship to almost 17,000 people. But campaigners say around 50,000 could still be eligible, calling on the new government to address the filibuster and bureaucracy in its first 100 days.
So many people suffered an injustice under successive governments over a long time, and since all of this came to light a while ago, the Home Office has been working hard to rectify things.
There is a real injustice in there, and we want a reset moment if Labour comes into office, and that means sorting out the compensation, which is far too slow.
As those affected wait for the next government to right the wrongs of the past, descendants from across the country are making sure their history is understood and cemented in public consciousness. Siobhan Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
She strutted the world's biggest catwalks and showcased some of fashion's most iconic looks. Now, the star-studded career of supermodel Naomi Campbell is being celebrated in a new exhibition at London's V&A. Ahead of the opening, I sat down with her to discuss what it's like to still be in such demand after 4 decades in the industry. By the early 1990s, the term supermodel was coined and used in direct reference to Naomi Campbell and a small group of fashion models turned international celebrities. Her iconic walk and work beyond fashion, championing diversity and amplifying various charities, elevated her beyond the runway. Naomi in Fashion is the first exhibition of its kind.
It's an honour, and I'm totally in awe of it and very grateful and feel very blessed.
What are you hoping people take away from the exhibition when they go along to see?
I want them to see the workmanship, the creatives that I've gotten to work with over these 4 decades, and the story, the narrative, and to understand me as a person more coming from me. You know, I never normally do that.
We've got to talk about your legendary walk. What work goes into it? Why do you think it's so iconic?
It's like, for me, when I walk, every outfit is different. It's the outfit, it's the ambiance, it's the music, it's the whole surroundings. It's what the narrative of the show is about.
In your career, what sort of challenges have you faced as a woman and as
we already know.
A black woman as well?
As a black woman, yes, we have faced those challenges. So it's like a way of life, because you become conditioned in a way to know you have to deal with it. to the point where you could preempt and kind of like be proactive to get it out of the way.
And just finally, is motherhood everything that you dreamt it would be?
It's great, thank you.
Has it completed you, do you think?
It's great, thank you.
Naomi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Speaking to us. A production of the ballet Swan has returned to the Royal Albert Hall 27 years after it was first performed in front of Princess Diana. 1997 was also an election year, with many people hoping a change of government could bring about change in the country. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has more.
A swarm of feathers perfectly in sync. Even non-dancers are aware of Swan Lake, but not like this.
They see everything from every angle, so you have to think about every single detail because every angle is visible.
Reconfigured by English National Ballet to be staged in the round, this jaw-dropping choreography was first performed over 25 years ago.
We hire an extra 60 dancers for this production, so you've got over 100 performers on the stage. So it's the sheer size of it. It's almost immersive. It is a massive, massive undertaking. This is like taking 3 Swan Lakes and putting it into one. The sheer amount of people coming onto the stage is mind-boggling.
For audiences who have seen this spectacle, it is a staging, they say, which stays with you. When this opened back in 1997, it caused a sensation, making waves within the dance world in a year when the country made a big political pivot. And of course now, some polls are suggesting the Conservatives are on course for the worst electoral defeat since that time.
As a dancer, I had never been so close to the audience, and you could actually see the whites of the audience's eyes.
Back then, Louise Halliday was one of the original cast, photographed with Princess Diana, who was a fan.
We all felt a part of the positivity, and I think something that we're all looking forward to is a bit more positivity in the national mood.
Now the Royal Albert Hall director, she hopes concern over the arts slipping down the school agenda will be addressed by whoever forms the next government.
Without children having access to the arts, how are we going to ignite that creative spark for future generations of singers, dancers, performers, playwrights? We have to think long term, and it starts at school.
Worth getting in a flap about when it's ensuring world-class ballet like this is seen by the widest possible audience. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
The Tartan army has descended on Stuttgart ahead of Scotland's final group game at Euro 2024. Tomorrow, they take on Hungary in a game they have to win to have a realistic chance of reaching the last 16. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has been mingling with the Scotland fans, hoping their German odyssey isn't over yet.
Why does it always end for Scotland in a washout? Maybe this time the clouds will lift by finally qualifying for the Euros knockout rounds.
We're ready to make history, guys. Let's go, Scotland. Come on.
We'll be coming! Thousands from the Tartan army in Stuttgart, many without tickets for tomorrow's clash with Hungary. Hopes boosted after drawing with Switzerland, following the thrashing by Germany.
It was probably more the mental side of the game that let us down in the first game, and the fact that we didn't get round to doing what we're good at. In the second game, we did what we're good at. We got a positive result. And hopefully we go to the match tomorrow and we do what we're good at.
And this is who they're all thinking about.
It's a chance for us to write ourselves in the history books and become a unique Scotland team. So for us, I think everyone wants to be the hero, but it's important that we just play the game normally. We know we're capable of getting the 3 points.
Win or draw, they might not be sure at full time or for days, even if they're through. And who, where or when they'll play in the last 16.
I think there's going to be about 4 days of are we in, are we not, so we'll wait and see.
Scared to get too excited, but thinking positively.
The first game we were just non-existent. Second game, as I said, we gave it a wee bit more. I mean, we've been to the qualifiers, we've played a lot better. If we can play to that level, we've got a chance, and that's all you can ask for.
We've always been glorious failures, so it'd be nice to turn the tables for once.
The weather did finally turn for the better in southern Germany. Will Scotland's fortunes?
Scotland haven't won a game at the Euros, but the Tartan Army have won a lot of praise across the country for the atmosphere they've brought to this tournament. They'll be hoping Stuttgart is not where the journey ends.
But losing to Hungary will definitely end their tournament. Scotland and their fans are determined to stay part of this festival of football. Rob Harris, Sky News, Stuttgart.
Well, let's get the rest of the day's sport now with James.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Amy James Turner's career has taken her from youth football in Yorkshire to the North West, Liverpool, Manchester United, then a season in the NWSL with Orlando Pride, to North London, where Amy helped Tottenham make history in the Women's FA Cup, reaching the final of the competition for the very first time. Not content with having impact on the pitch, Amy's also doing so off it, representing and driving the voice of women's football on climate.
Hey Amy, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Hang on, you didn't tell me about this. Bringing a portable friend along, who's this?
Betsy comes everywhere with me, so she wanted to come and meet you, David.
Oh, come on. All right, listen, great season for Spurs. How's it been?
Yeah, it's been a great season, like you said, so many ups and downs, but so pleased with where we are this season compared to where we were last season, so yeah, really happy.
So you've done this report. Tell me, what was the process and who did you speak to?
You know how I've been using my voice to promote sustainability initiatives, and yeah, I'm really passionate about this space, and I thought, how do other players in the game feel about this? You know I spark conversations in the dressing room, and I know it's very much me starting these conversations, but I felt like there was an interest there, and you know, women's football, there's so many great advocates in the game, and I thought, you know, I'll have a chat to my teammates, I'll see what they're thinking, where could we go with this?
It's starting to rain.
Yes,
I think we need some coffee. Shall we go?
Yeah,
let's go and meet some new players then.
113 surveys completed, 36 clubs represented, 10 in-depth interviews and 3 close friends and colleagues here with Amy to give the stories behind the stats.
So how do you think climate change and the issues of climate change is affecting playing conditions on the field?
I'll never forget when I was over in the US, I was in Seattle at the time, and there was really bad air pollution, and you know, the orange sky, yeah, it was just crazy conditions to be playing, and you drive into the game, you can barely see. You know, the government put out messages for everyone to stay home and not exercise outside, and then there's us driving to matches, and the game was going ahead. And the solution from the league was to put oxygen tanks on the sideline and to have a break every 15 minutes in the match. And the 15-minute increments like absolutely killed me. You know, got used to it, got used to having these like mini breaks through the season, and then as soon as we got back to playing a whole match in 45-minute halves, it felt like the longest game ever.
I can't even imagine as a coach preparing your team for 15-minute break, like every 15-minute breaks, because can you imagine what the momentum that does to the game? But I remember when we were in Louisville on pre-season tour, and some of our players were overheating because we were playing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and the humidity was so high.
If you're playing in these extreme heats and you're a high-pressing team, okay, maybe you can't do that at these extreme temperatures. We want to put on a show of women's football that's exciting to watch, and if you're looking sluggish, if you're not playing at your best, it's not a good representation of the game. Exactly.
Yeah. Being in England, we've obviously experienced extreme weather, but probably the opposite. Like, we've had a lot of rainfall in this country, and I've got a younger sister who's had more games than ever.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Finally, the Queen of Pop met an actual royal at Wembley Stadium last night as Taylor Swift began the London leg of her Eras tour. Kensington Palace released a photo of Prince William and his children Charlotte and George meeting the superstar at last night's gig. In a post on X, the Prince and Princess of Wales thanked Taylor Swift for a great evening. She then also sent a selfie wishing the Prince a happy birthday and saying her London shows were off to a great start. Even the heir to the throne can be forgiven for a spot of dad dancing after footage emerged of him shaking it off during the concert. Last night was the first of 9 shows at Wembley as part of Swift's record-breaking Eras tour. So if this is the start of a love story, the Prince could be back for more in August. He really is getting down there, isn't he? That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by Editor-in-Chief for National World, Nancy Fielder, and broadcaster and psychotherapist, Lucy Beresford. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Mail on Sunday. Their headline, Zelensky, Farage is infected with the virus of Putin. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.